oh, the dreaded, we got him out of our hair, and now she wants to bring him back. I have cases like this every so often, and yes, there's things that you can do now. Um, Unfortunately, they're sort of putting you between a rock and a hard place to where you've got to legally challenge their decisions, because otherwise they're just going to be obstinate like they're doing and hope you just sort of accept it. And so let's read the question. Trying to figure out what my rights are. As a parent, 4 years ago, I voluntarily enrolled my son into a school designed to address students with behavioral issues. Now, I don't know, because you're in South Dakota, I don't know what voluntarily enrolled your child, who's paying for that placement. Because if it was your IEP team in your home school, then at that point, your home school is responsible for the FAPE, whether your child is receiving a free and appropriate public education over in that whatever behavioral school, okay? Now, if you voluntarily enrolled him and it's some kind of state-funded program or even a private pay program that is completely separate and removed from your home school, they can't deny you in re-enrolling your son back in his home school. That's if there is no connection. If you are privately paying for this placement, or if it's a state-funded placement to where your home school doesn't have any legal responsibility with regards to IEP team decisions. In that situation, they cannot deny your child enrollment if you choose that you no longer want to send your child over to that other school. They just can't do that. That's discriminatory. And I have a situation like that currently where a school's trying to deny one of my clients access because the parent isn't sending the wheelchair with her child. There's no doctor recommendation that a wheelchair be used, period. And in fact, encourages the opposite, as much independent movement as possible. But the school doesn't want to do that. So they're denying access based upon the fact that the parent will not provide a wheelchair. You can't do stuff like that, guys. You just cannot do that. I don't care what you want as a school if there's no medical recommendations for that. So in your situation, if that is a situation and they have no connection with this outside company, they can't sit there and say, well, we're not going to let you, we'll let you do virtual. They can't do stuff like that. Okay, now, if there is that connection, if they do have that connection to where you've been having IEP meetings with your school and this private school to where their roles are combined and there's still a responsibility to provide a free, appropriate public education, then at that point, it's a different situation. And if they have not been focused on your son's academics and only on behavior, then your son is not receiving a free, appropriate public education in this private placement. And at that point, that's a due process case. That is a request for mediation. That's a state complaint. That's an OCR complaint. Any of those options you could sit there and trigger because your child has multiple educational performance areas that fall into what a free and appropriate public education is. And that's academics, communication, and emotional, social emotional, which would include behavior. Okay? So if they're addressing behavior, they can't just ignore academics. Can't do that. So they've got to provide a global program. And, you know, if you're finding out that that's not what their focus is, then that's not the right place for your child in your local school system. If they do have that collaborative responsibility and they're still overseeing your child's IEP, then shame on them. They should have known that that wasn't serving all of your child's educational performance needs. And at that point, should have pulled him a long time ago or pushed additional services into this private placement so that those academic needs are being covered, okay? Which is what your school can do now if they're not allowing him to come back. You could have him remain in this current placement and then tell the school that they need to push in academic services into this private placement in order for it to be appropriate. The other option is, like I said, you're going to have to sit there and file a complaint in order to force them to accept him as a regular student, and then work in rebuilding his program at his home school. In rebuilding his program, meaning you're going to have a team of people that have an expertise, because you don't want the behavior to then impact the educational performance areas of academics and communication. It's already impacting negatively the social emotional, and so make sure that all three need to be handled. But if he returns back to his home setting, he hasn't been there in 4 school years, and so at that point you would be sort of starting from scratch. But it's not an uncommon thing for me to see schools play these games because he's been out of their hair for 4 years and they've enjoyed it, and they don't want him to come back. So they're trying to build as many obstacles to prevent that from happening. But also what that also means is that, they don't know him and he doesn't know them. And you would be rebuilding this from the ground level. That's why in this situation, it may be better to try to have your school system push in and fix that academic component in the current placement. I mean, don't be afraid to think outside the box on this, because I can tell you, and I'm telling all parents this, if you don't think outside the box and you don't come to the table with plans, then don't assume that they have an idea of what they're doing. Don't automatically assume that your IEP team knows how to serve your child. Okay? Because I can tell you, I have a complex 17-year-old, and my wife and I have always come to the table with the plan that we believe the team needs to try. I don't sit there and just go, well, what do you guys think? I just don't do that, and I don't recommend anybody do that. Now, I also believe that you need to be balanced. You don't need to sit, because some of you are over preparers, and some of you, go in there and you have a 20-page list mapped out. This is what needs to happen for my child, and on that regard, that's overkill. Okay, you need to be somewhere in the middle. And if you are one of those over preparers and you have a list from top to bottom of what needs to happen for your child, then for you, I recommend chunking your request. Just couple things here, and you'll find that the school is far more attuned to approving small requests, not a 20-page long, this is what's going to happen. But I am telling you that too many parents are afraid to think outside the box and afraid to negotiate with their school system, when I'm telling you that, yeah, they're the school, but we also have human beings that are dealing with very complex, individualized kids, and the parents can bring a lot to the table if they know how to present that information to the team. And believe me, a lot of teams are far more eager to listen to the parent ideas, and if it's presented in the right way, and it's appreciated. Okay. That's what I would recommend for you.